greetings of peace, greetings of paradise. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. There is no better way to start an event like this than a few verses from the Holy Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا فتحنا لك فتحا مبينا ليغفر لك الله ما تقدم من ذنبك وما تأخر ويتم نعمته عليك ويهديك صراطا مستقيما وينصرك الله نصرا عزيزا. هو الذي أنزل السكينة في قلوب المؤمنين ليزدادوا إيمانا مع إيمانهم ولله جنود السماوات والأرض وكان الله عليما حكيما. ليدخل المؤمنين والمؤمنات جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها ويكفر عنهم سيئاتهم وكان ذلك عند الله فوزا عظيما. So introducing today's speaker, who's flying all the way from London, Birmingham, allowed me to talk a few words about him so that you also value the presenter as well as the message he brings with him. Mufti Mohammed Tosir Miah from Birmingham, London, has delivered several lectures in the UK, Australia, Sweden, Italy, Malaysia, and Bahrain. Of course, in several other places around the world. On topics of the 5 pillars of Islam, marriage, the Khulafa, and the lives of 20 most influential Imams. He answers queries for the Muslim community in Darul Ilm in Birmingham. He is also the editor of the quarterly magazine Al-Mujib. Some copies are available here in Discover Islam. He is also an inspirational leader who has managed to change ordinary people's lives by creating Darul Ilm Madrasa. Learning in predominantly Muslim countries is different than in places of the West. A lot of the institutions over there in the West are formed by individual inspirational personalities. And one of them is Mufti Mohammed Tosir, who single-handedly and then with the help of some brothers started an institute to be a learning point for the Muslims and their needs of knowledge in Islam in and around city of Birmingham. He also delivers these lectures online, so you can get the knowledge through the online, what do you call it? Online e-learning, right? E-learning is a very generic term. I thought there is a specific word for it.
Webinar.
No, webinar. There is a specific.
With IQ.
With IQ? Oh, okay, inshallah. With IQ is the form he's using or the technology or the app he's using, but it's also available online. So you sitting in Bahrain can also register for his courses and learn from him through his online platform. We will be talking about it, and we have a flyer which is posted at the notice board at the back outside. And if interested, Brother Abdul Hamid can provide you further information about it. Okay, so I've taken my time already. Mufti Mohammed, Tosir, Miah, go ahead.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Ashrafil Anbiya wal Mursaleen. Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Like I have done in my previous talks over the past few days, firstly, I would like to begin by thanking Discover Islam, by thanking the brothers and sisters for organizing this event, in particular Dr. Uwais, also Brother Sheikh Abdul Hamid Sahab, for organizing this event and for giving me the opportunity to convey the message of Allah and His beloved Messenger Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that may these events over the past few days be a source of change for the brothers and sisters of Bahrain, and inshallah ta'ala it will be a source of sadaqah jariyah for yourselves in this world and also in the hereafter. Because standing up on the podium and delivering a talk or a lecture is actually very, very easy. But to organize an event of any magnitude is actually very, very difficult, because not only do you have to organize things on the day, the camera, the speakers, the mic system, the refreshments, but it's all the advertising before on social media, which takes a lot of time. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I'm saying this really from the bottom of my heart, accept all the brothers and sisters' efforts over the past few days, as today, or this is my last lecture of the tour, if you want to call it. So inshallah, I really want to show my gratitude from myself and also from our organization to the brothers and sisters here. Ameen thumma ameen. Now, one of the principles Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned, it's a usul which can be found in the usuls of tafsir, books such as Al-Fawz al-Kabir, written by Shah Waliullah Muhaddis Dehlwi rahimullah. He has mentioned this particular usul and principle, and that is that whenever a prophet of Allah or messenger of Allah is sent to a particular place or area or a nation, the aim of that prophet is not to make any drastic changes, but rather the good things people have been doing to make the people continue with those good things. And yes, the evil things they have been doing, to then remove that. So certain practices, cultural practices, practices from Jahiliyyah, the aim and the purpose of the Prophet is to remove that. But the good things which people are doing, to continue with that and to implement that. So let's take an example of the Messenger of Allah, Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When he was sent to Arabia all those years ago, the people of Makkah, they weren't entirely bad as we sometimes imagine or think they were. Don't get me wrong, they used to do bad, but they weren't unconditionally bad. In other words, the people of Makkah, the mushrikeens of Makkah, they used to hold an event. That event was the event of Hajj. Even before Prophet ﷺ's bi'that, they used to have this annual Hajj. And during this Hajj, أَجَعَلْتُمْ سِقَايَةَ الْحَاجِّ, they used to actually give water to the Hujjaj, to the pilgrims who used to come from different parts of Arabia. And they used to look after the Hujjaj who used to come, give them food. They used to say that, look, these are our guests. That's why we see, alhamdulillah, even to this day, the Arabs having this sifat and this quality of hospitality. So the point I'm trying to make is that when a prophet or a messenger is sent, all the things which the non-believers were doing, it's not bad. The good things the Prophet ﷺ keeps and maintains, and yes, the evil or the bad, the prophets try to remove that from the people. And this is like a point which I want to mention to all da'is or mainly leaders or role models, that you don't have to implement a mass change to make your points. It's all about knowing the qualities of the people who are below you, under you, employees, whatever you want to call them, knowing their strengths and their good qualities, and inshallah keeping that, maintaining that, and yes, perhaps their bad qualities, then to remove that slowly over time. So whenever, and this could be applied, this principle when it comes to being imams, when it comes to taking over organizations, becoming CEOs of organizations, you don't have to sack and expel every single employee from your workforce. No, the good employees, you keep their good qualities, their good principles, and perhaps the things which they are lacking on, you inshallah work on that. And inshallah we see this through Prophet ﷺ's life, that he never, say for example, the good qualities of people he always maintained, but he always said to them that if certain conditions are found, then you will be considered to be the best. I'll give you another example. This hadith can be found in Sahih Muslim. The Prophet of Allah ﷺ has said, "An-nasu ma'adin ka ma'adin al-dhahabi wal-fidda," which means that the people are like mines, like gold and silver mines. Now when you dig for gold, you get different types of gold. You get the pure gold, and you get the gold which is like covered with dust. So Prophet ﷺ has said people are like that. You get different types of people. You get very good people, just naturally they're very good. You get some people who are not so good. But like the dust which is covering the gold, you just need to polish them a few times, and inshallah you then see the gold shining. So Prophet ﷺ said the same, that people are different forms, some are good, some are not so good. Then he said, خِيَارُهُمْ فِي الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ خِيَارُهُمْ فِي الْإِسْلَامِ إِذَا فَقُهُ أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام, which means the best from amongst them in Jahiliyyah. In other words, whilst they were non-Muslims, the best from amongst them is also the best from amongst them in Islam, but on one condition, which is إِذَا فَقُهُ, when they have understanding of the Islam, deen. So from this we can understand that actually you may have been a very good person whilst you were non-Muslim, that you may have good manners, good akhlaq, good tarbiyah, all these things. When you become a Muslim, you are also considered to be the best in those attributes, but there is one additional condition, and that is that if you have understanding of deen, if you have understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's words and the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the first point which I want to make as the topic is about the vision of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and how he changed the community. Whenever we listen to these types of talks, how he changed the community, we always think that there must have been some great, drastic change and chaos when. No, it wasn't like that. It was actually done very, very simply. But the usul, the principle was, the good things of people were retained and the evil over time was kind of removed through hard work, through da'wah, and by convincing them, these things were removed. And I just want to give some examples of how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in his very soft and gentle way, changed people. Again, this is another point which da'is can make note of, that you don't have to be aggressive when it comes to changing. You don't have to be, as they say in English or colloquial English, that you don't have to be in their face to kind of give da'wah. Sometimes softly, gently also plays a part in terms of changing people's perception and refraining people from sins. So I'll begin with a hadith, very famous hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari, of a Bedouin urinating in the Masjid al-Nabawi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So everybody knows that the companions, they were all angry and scolding, or what are you doing to the Bedouin? Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was very gentle. He said, Da'u, leave it. And then, in the words of the Bedouin explained that I have never seen a mu'allim or a teacher like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Never. He did not scold me, he did not humiliate me, he did not belittle me. But rather, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that look, the masjids haven't been built for urination, for feces and these things. It hasn't been built for those. And in that way, Prophet ﷺ, in a nice, gentle way, explained that look, you shouldn't be doing those kinds of things in the masjid. And in a nice, gentle way, Prophet ﷺ explained about the concept of the masjid. And obviously that Bedouin, he took it and then he changed. So what I'm trying to explain is that you don't have to be critical or scolding or in your face or aggressive when it comes to giving da'wah. Even to the extent that Prophet ﷺ, he never liked telling people openly if he was angry. He wouldn't all the time, sometimes he will, not all the time, will kind of tell that person directly, you're doing wrong and you're being incorrect. But rather, many a time, Prophet ﷺ will indirectly do the islah and the rectification of the companions. Another example which comes to mind was, again, a very famous hadith, that once Prophet ﷺ heard the companions, they were talking about taqdeer and fate. As I'm sure you know, you're not supposed to be talking about fate. Yes, it's something which we believe in, but we shouldn't really indulge in it. Many hadiths, I don't want to go into the topic now, but it's something which you shouldn't really indulge in. So some of the companions were talking about that. So Prophet ﷺ, what he did was, the following day, he stood up on the minbar and he said to the companions that, look, I heard that you're talking about taqdeer and fate. And he was angry to the extent that Prophet ﷺ's cheeks became red, and it's mentioned in the hadith of Sunan Ibn Majah that it became red like the reddish color of a pomegranate. And Prophet ﷺ said that indeed people of the past were destroyed because of them talking about taqdeer and fate. So that's again another example where scolding or islah or rectification was done, but it wasn't done like proper openly at that person. So I'm sure many of your brothers and sisters, you will encounter non-Muslims, perhaps even Muslims as well, who are doing incorrect, who are doing wrong. So you shouldn't all the time, go for their throats and say you're wrong, you're incorrect. I'm sure Sheikh Saab has mentioned these techniques before on how to give da'wah, and I'm sure he's also mentioned that we shouldn't be overly aggressive when it comes to giving da'wah and these things. So it's always about indirectly making the point without them realizing that you are scolding them or you are belittling them. That's the key of da'wah. Another example which comes to mind was, again, just a part of the hadith I just mentioned which deals with this topic, and that is that some of the Sahabas were hitting and beating their wives up. So they all kind of like lined outside Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha and the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's house, complaining about what their husbands were doing. So the following day, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he kind of, again, didn't single anyone out, didn't say, well, I heard your wife complaining about you, I heard your missus complaining about you. No, but rather Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in a generic way, corrected their mistakes, and he said that those who hit or beat their wives are not from the khiyarun nas, are not from the best of the people. So there's, alhamdulillah, many examples like that where Prophet ﷺ indirectly did the islah and the rectification of people without being aggressive, without being upfront. And this is one of the techniques of da'wah, inshallah, which I'm sure all of you brothers are aware of. Now, going back to this point of da'wah, inshallah, come to the main topic in a second. But as obviously many of the brothers and sisters who are here today are, I'm assuming, are core da'is, or are in the field of da'wah, I'm sure there must be also a few who perhaps are not into da'wah, but I'm sure will also benefit from some of the points of da'wah which I'm going to mention. Now, when it comes to da'wah and conveying the message, when it comes to even conveying the message of Islam to non-Muslims, or even telling people to change their lives and they are Muslims, there's a few things which we always need to adhere to. And I just want to take this opportunity to mention these points, and I'm sure everyone will benefit. Again, some of you may be thinking, oh well, Sheikh, we've heard these points before. But one of the beauties of Islam is there's so many things we hear, but it's always good to kind of do a reminder. فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَى تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, because indeed reminders benefits the believers. It's like, say for example, I think an example Dr. Saab was giving earlier in the meeting about Coca-Cola. So it's the same that we know Coca-Cola, like Coca-Cola is one of the biggest, perhaps money-making company in the world. But why do they still advertise? It's a good point. Why do they still advertise for? So it's just a reminder, isn't it? Even though they make a lot of money, and when we go to shops like McDonald's or Burger King, we still perhaps will order a Coca-Cola with our Big Mac or fries or chicken wraps. But why do they still spend millions and millions of pounds in advertising? It's again, same principle we could apply here, because فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَى, well, I won't say تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, more like تَنْفَعُ الْآكِلِينَ, benefits the eaters and the sharibin perhaps. But anyway, the point is that sometimes these reminders are needed, even though we may have heard about it many times, but the reminders are still needed. So inshallah, I just want to say a few things. Number one is, when it comes to giving da'wah, when it comes to conveying the message. First and foremost, the first condition which is very, very important is sincerity. Ikhlas, or making sure that you're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is the key. Remember, niyat is between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah knows truly why you're doing this da'wah for. If you are giving da'wah to people for your own aim, for your own gharaz we call it, or your own purpose, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that as well. And you won't be getting reward for that. I know a lot of brothers and sisters, especially in the UK, again, I'm sure it probably be the case here as well in Bahrain, that they want to marry a non-Muslim. So a brother wants to marry a non-Muslim, a Christian. So now he'll be contacting myself or any other scholars, Sheikh, how do I convert someone to Islam, and wanting to know all the information, the technique. Now, subhanAllah, it's a good thing. But when you look at it, his intention isn't that hadith, man da'a ila hudan kana lahu mithlu ajri fa'ihi, aw kama qala salatu wassalam. His intention is jaldi se jaldi la, quickly just get her converted so that I can marry her. And this reminds me of the hadith of, actually the same hadith, innamal a'malu bin niyat, where you had Muhajir Qais, where he basically migrated from Makkah to Medina Munawwara, not because for lillahi wali rasul, but it was to get married. So hence, he's not going to get the reward or thawab of migration. So likewise, when it comes to da'wah, this is actually quite a serious point, that we see a lot of people, they do da'wah, don't get me wrong, whether it's in a organized structure, alhamdulillah, like it is here at Discover Islam, or whether it's street da'wahs or unorganized or at work individually, or whether through social media platforms. So basically, the point I was trying to make is that a lot of people give da'wah, but not all the time their intentions are good. Sometimes it could be to get married, sometimes it could be just to for the ego, it could be also as well to make a point that, yeah, you know what, I converted that person, and to get the credit. So many reasons why people do that. So first and foremost, when it comes to giving da'wah, always make sure that you're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, the first point, or the first tip, I think, alhamdulillah, I'll say more or less everyone kind of fulfills. It's the second one which becomes an issue, and that is steadfastness, istiqamat. And to understand istiqamat and da'wah, have a read of the story of Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam. For 950 years he was giving da'wah. His people did not believe in him. A few did, but not everyone. And this is one tip or one nasiha or advice to give to the brothers and sisters, is that when it comes to da'wah, you will come across many, many challenges. I'm sure many of these challenges you've already faced. I'm sure you've already raised it with with the da'i who's in charge. Many, many challenges, and it's very easy to give up. It's very, very easy to give up. But what you need to do, you need to be steadfast. Remember the stories of the prophets. Remember Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Have a read of the seerah, not only of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but also of the prophets before you give da'wah. If da'wah was so easy, you know what, everybody would be a da'i. But are there so many da'is in the world? No, not that many. There's, I'll say, a lot of alims and ulamas in the world, but compared to how many da'is there are, there's very, very few, because da'wah isn't everyone's kettle of fish, as they say. It's not easy. You're always going to face challenges. Not only that, there's going to be insults at you, at a person, what they call character assassination. Read the story of Salih alayhi salam. Hud alayhi salatu wasalam, they were called Majnoon and this and that. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was called Majnoon, Sahib, so many things. But the prophets alayhi salatu wasalam did not let go of the responsibility and the message. So the second point you mentioned is be steadfast. Make sure that you don't give it up. And you may be thinking, well, Sheikh, how do I remain steadfast? Like, how do I actually remain steadfast in da'wah? I think a easy way to start off with is do something which is in moderation. That's the best. One of the reasons why people let go of da'wah or a lot of things in life is at the very beginning they just go over the top. They go a bit OTT, over the top. And they are not able to maintain it. And then when they do drop, then they drop fully. In other words, they just leave everything out. And this brings me to a beautiful hadith which can be found in Sunan al-Tirmidhi. The Prophet ﷺ said, Inna likulli shay'in shirratan wa likulli shirratin fatratun. That indeed for everything there is an enthusiasm. When you start something off, there's that enthusiasm. It's what we call in the Urdu language as josh. You're proper like hyper. So we start something off. We start the alim class off, for how humans say. So we want to be a scholar within a year. Probably less than that, 6 months if possible. We want to be a doctor in 6 months. We want to be a lawyer in 6 months. So when we start things off, our enthusiasm is so high that we try to study or be something and our level is this high. Obviously we're human beings at the end of the day. Hence Prophet ﷺ said, وَلِكُلِّ شِرَّةٍ فَتْرَةٌ. And for every enthusiasm there is weakness. Yeah, you're going to drop because you can't maintain that. It's impossible for you to maintain that high level. So then what do we do? What you do, and I say this to all students, is when you start something up, whether it's studying, whatever, just do something which is moderation. وَإِنْ قَلَّ. Even though it is a little. But, what was the hadith? إِنَّ أَحَبَّ الْأَعْمَالِ أَدْوَمُهَا وَإِنْ قَلَّ. That indeed the most beloved of actions to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is أَدْوَمُهَا. The action which is done continuously, وَإِنْ قَلَّ, even though it is a little. Even though it is a little. Again, another hadith which comes to mind. This happened during Umar radiallahu anhu's time, where one of the tabi'is, his name escapes my mind, I think his name is Sulaiman. He wasn't there for the Fajr prayer, Fajr in Jama'ah. So Umar radiallahu anhu, after Fajr finished, he walks by his house, he sees his mother. And he says to his mother, oh, where's Sulaiman? I didn't see him for Fajr. So his mother said, oh, he didn't come for Fajr because he spent the entire night in Qiyamul Layl, and then he got so tired that he missed his Fajr. And this is the problem which sometimes we have when it comes down. We do so much da'wah, whatever we do, so high. When we drop, we then miss the fara'is. We then miss what is really fard, like the prayers and rights of our wives and huquqs and whatever it may be. So I want to say to all the students, brothers and sisters, when it comes to da'wah, always do a level which you are able to maintain. So these are like 2 points which I want to mention about giving da'wah. I'll say there's so many other points which I'm sure Sheikh Saab has mentioned many a time, but 2 in particular, that is sincerity and ikhlas, and number 2 in terms of steadfastness. May Allah give us all tawfiq. Whatever we do in life, whether it is da'wah, studying, whatever it may be, may Allah give us istiqamat, inshallah. Now moving along to the next point here is, how did Prophet ﷺ's vision change the community? I already mentioned one point that he did it slowly. He wasn't overly aggressive in changing things. The good things of people he maintained, the evil things he removed. So how did Prophet ﷺ change people's perception? How did he make Islam flourish and blossom, in particular in Medina Munawwara? How did Prophet ﷺ manage to do that? Now, there were 5 ways in which Prophet ﷺ made Islam flourish. There were 5 ways. The first way was to establish religious rights. So this is like when Prophet ﷺ migrated to Medina. Firstly, he established what we call religious rights. Number 2, the second way Prophet ﷺ changed the perception of people in Medina, implemented a community cohesion and vision, was by giving people the rights. So it's by rights giving. Number 3 was educational rights. Number 4, racial rights. And number 5, conflict solving rights. I know some of the brothers and sisters are making some notes, so I'll just quickly go over those 5 points because I'm sure it will help many da'is when it comes to certain questions or challenges. So they are: number 1, religious rights. Number 2, by just giving rights giving. Number 3 was educational. Number 4 was racial. And number 5 was conflict resolution. Now let's have a look at each one of them individually. This is how to build a community. Now we always talk about community cohesion, perhaps not as much in Bahrain, but definitely in the UK, where they always say that Muslims are not integrating into society, and they always talk about community cohesion. But actually, Prophet ﷺ was the very first person all those years ago to kind of make Muslims and everyone integrate and to introduce community cohesion. So the first way Prophet ﷺ did that was by giving people their religious rights. What we mean by that is, in Medina Munawwara, there was no force on deen. La ikraha fi deen. So you can't force anyone to believe. But rather, everyone were able to practice their religion freely. Even to the extent that the Christians of Najran, who came to Prophet ﷺ and they were asking some questions about Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. So then that led to what we call a mubahala. Mubahala is where you have 2 contradictory, conflicting parties. So the Muslims or Prophet ﷺ saying that, look, Isa alayhi salam, he is Abdullah wa Rasuluhu. Christians of Najran were saying, no, he is Naudhubillah, Ibnullah. So they requested that let's make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala judge this case. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we will call our sons and our daughters, وَنِسَاءَنَا وَنِسَاءَكُمْ وَأَنفُسَنَا وَأَنفُسَكُمْ ثُمَّ نَبْتَهِلْ فَنَجْعَلْ لَعْنَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْكَاذِبِينَ. So Prophet ﷺ then called Sayyidina Ali, Sayyidina Fatima, Hassan, Hussein radiallahu anhuma, and they all gathered. But the Christians of Najran did not turn up. They were scared that they knew what the haqq and the right was. But anyway, the point I was trying to make is that when the Christians of Najran came, Prophet ﷺ allowed them to pray Salatul Asr inside Masjid al-Nabawi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they were using Masjid al-Nabawi sallallahu alaihi wasallam's facilities to pray their salah, which was around Asr time. Obviously, we won't call it Salatul Asr because Asr is a name for other prophets. I won't go into too detail about the prayers which other prophets also had as well. It's mentioned that 2 rakats of Fajr was practiced during Sayyidina Adam alayhi salatu wasalam's time. 4 rakats of Dhuhr was practiced during the time of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. And the 4 rakats of Asr was practiced by Sayyidina, I think it was Sayyidina Idris alayhi salatu wasalam, top of my head. And number 4, the Maghrib 3 rakats was Dawud alayhi salam, فَخَرَّ رَاكِيًا وَعَنَابٍ. And with regards to Isha, Salatul Isha, then that is something which is specific for this ummah. No other nations had this particular prayer. Anyway, the point I was trying to make is that they were praying, the Christians of Najran, inside Masjid al-Nabawi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave right to all non-Muslims. So there wasn't any compulsion that you have to believe, otherwise you're going to get beheading. No, everyone was free. So this is what we call religious rights, even to the extent that the hypocrites had rights as well. Like many occasions where it became clear and exposed that Abdullah bin Ubay, he was the leader of the hypocrites, it became clear and exposed that he was a hypocrite. Even then, Prophet ﷺ did not do anything. And one of the companions said to Prophet ﷺ that, why aren't you doing anything to him? So Prophet ﷺ said that, look, I don't want to kill him, and then rumor spreads that, oh look, Muhammad ﷺ is killing his own people. So there's so many examples like that, and everybody, they received rights and huquqs when it came to Islam. So that is number 1, what we call the fulfilling and the giving of religious rights. The second thing to mention is what we call rights giving, i.e. giving rights. In other words, Prophet ﷺ made sure that everyone in Medina Munawwara received their rights. So the weak received their rights. The orphans in particular, they received their rights. What is to happen regarding orphans at the very beginning of Islam was their guardian used to usurp and take away all their wealth. Take away all their wealth. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the ayat that do not eat the wealth of the orphans. If you do, إِنَّمَا يَأْكُلُونَ فِي بُطُونِهِمْ نَارًا. You are swallowing fire in your belly. So the rights of the orphans were restored, and more importantly, the rights of women were restored as well. Because before Islam, women did not receive any of the inheritances. But after Islam, women then started receiving inheritance. Women then started, or it was considered to be applicable or possible for them to start owning things. Before, and even in the Western world, just recently, as say 150 years ago, women were considered to be like chattels. Chattels mean like transferable goods. You could actually buy and sell. Freed women, not talking about slave girls, talking about freed women. So Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave women their rights, and I said everybody was given their rights. So this is how you kind of implement this community cohesion of implementing the rights, giving people their rights, in particular those who are weak, those who are vulnerable, making sure that you give something to them. In another ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذَا حَضَرَ الْقِسْمَةَ أُولُو الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينَ فَارْزُقُوهُم مِّنْهُ. What's the explanation of this ayat and verse here? Is sometimes it would happen where the wealthy or the rich, they would be distributing their lands. They may be distributing the booty. So if any poor or vulnerable persons comes at that time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَرْزُقُوهُمْ مِنْ, give them something. So there was this encouragement of giving people their rights. Not only that, there was this encouragement in Medina Munawwara of helping the people, helping the needy. And this is where the term the Ansar, which Sheikh Saab was saying is one of the titles of one of your groups, the Ansar groups. This is where it comes from. Because when the Muhajireens came from Makkah Mukarramah, they had nothing in Medina. Nothing at all. Literally empty-handed. Nothing. And it's not like they didn't have nothing. It's like some of them didn't have their wives, their children. No one to even fall back to. So they came to Medina Munawwara. And you then had the Ansar who helped them. And the Ansar, obviously they helped them, but the Muhajirin also helped them back, which I will refer to in a second. But the Ansar were there to help them financially, also at the same time in terms of giving their love and giving their affection. So I'm sure many of you, perhaps doing relief work for people from Syria and other types of places. So in a way, your contribution to them is like the contribution the Ansar made to the Muhajirin. So, like as I was saying that, with regards to the Ansar and the Muhajirin relationship, that the Muhajirin, obviously they didn't want to live off the Ansar, even though the Ansar offered them half of everything. But rather the Muhajirin, they kind of took half of the produce of the date palm trees from the orchards of Medina Munawwara, but in return the Muhajirin, they kind of worked on their lands as well. So it's not like they got it free, because I think I was explaining this concept in a previous talk that even in Islam's Sharia, it says you make an effort. You don't get things free, like you don't get things given to you on a plate. So even the Muhajirin, don't get me wrong, the Ansar offered them half of everything, but the Muhajirin didn't take it. They didn't actually take it. They said that, okay, you could give us half, but we're going to earn that half by cultivating on your land. So in other words, they were working for the Ansar. Like another example of Sahih al-Bukhari, where again, an Ansari man offered Abdurrahman bin Auf radiallahu ta'ala anhu half of everything, even to the extent that he offered, he had 2 wives, and he said, I'll divorce one of my wives, and you could marry her if you want. Abdurrahman bin Auf radiallahu ta'ala anhu says, no, that's fine, may Allah reward you. Tell me where the nearest market is. So he then went to the market, he started buying, selling, and then after a while, when he had the means, he then got married. So the point I'm trying to make is that, this notion that everything is free and so on, actually, no, it wasn't. No, nothing was given to the Muhajirin. They actually earned for that. But the point I'm trying to make is that that help or that assistance was there in helping the needy and the poor. And this then takes me on to the next point about the importance of helping people within your community. Yeah, this is where most of the Ansar, your effort will be rewarded, because when somebody converts to Islam, you then do a follow-up. You make sure that, okay, are they financially stable? Not only that, but you also make sure that if they're going through any difficulties, any turmoil, you're there to help them. And this comes under this topic of rights giving and helping the needy, helping the vulnerable, helping those who are in need. And I just want to quote a couple of hadiths to you. I'm sure many of these hadiths you have heard before. This hadith here, which can be found in Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, that Prophet ﷺ said, I'm just going to quote that part of the hadith which is relevant to this topic and point here. Prophet ﷺ said, وَمَنْ كَانَ فِي حَاجَةِ أَخِيهِ وَمَنْ كَانَ فِي حَاجَةِ أَخِيهِ كَانَ اللَّهُ فِي حَاجَتِهِ, which means that whoever is in the need of his brother, in other words, always dealing with people's issues, being that ear for them in terms of they want someone to speak to, talk to, We just today met one of the sisters from Discover Islam, and she's also, mashallah, this hadith reminds me of her in terms of the hard work she puts and counseling and speaking to people. Social work, in other words, that comes under here. That whoever is in the need of the brothers and sisters, so counseling, speaking to people, people going through difficulties, marital issues, disputes, divorces even, and to kind of like speak to them and help them, then he says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be in their help and in their assistance. And I think this is very important for all da'is, in particular those who are from the Ansar group, that you may be thinking, oh, why do I need to help so and so for? I might as well just stay at home. And sometimes you need to understand, Shaitan is very clever. He will say that, look, oh, you should help your family, you should help your wife or help your children, and don't go and help somebody else. What we fail to realize is that if we are in the need of people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be in our needs. And I've noticed this a lot as well, even with myself, that sometimes because I do a lot of dawah and lectures and